Welcome to Refused Flank, a wargaming podcast exploring the intersection of competitive excellence and narrative storytelling potential. Hey, this is Cam.
And this is Grant.
And we're back with another episode of Refused Flank. We are talking about Battletech this week. And
Hallelujah.
This is, a big game for Grant. I've only played once. He did a little intro game for me.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've played.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun, though.
It's a lot.
So I'm excited to play more, but because of that, Grant's going to be providing most of the content on this episode. So I'm going to add some structure by asking some questions to guide that conversation and keep you corralled so
sure.
we don't do a 3-hour episode.
I can very easily get off topic. This is probably my favorite fictional universe.
Yeah.
I just love the lore. I just love it. I don't know why. It's
all right, well,
Game
give
of Thrones
us the
in space.
60-second pitch version of what is Battletech, and you can start with from the lore version of it.
Okay, so the inner sphere is a portion of the Milky Way galaxy, about 1,000 years from now, and essentially there's these great houses and other splinter and smaller factions that have taken over parts of the inner sphere. It's not the whole galaxy, it's smaller than that, but it's a large swath of space, and they're just constantly warring with each other and bickering and fighting about and taking territory, losing territory. But it's also unique in that they, in the past, had this terrible war where all these planets got nuked and eviscerated.
Mm-hmm.
But now they've kind of collectively agreed to not do that.
No nukes.
No nukes, although they have the technology for it. So now combat and warfare has kind of devolved into this weird state where battle mechs make sense. And things like giant starships and stuff also exist. But where Battletech really gets exciting for me is just in the breadth and as well as the depth. You can look up individual manufacturers for different weapon systems, who designed this armor. You can find the planet. You can,
So it's not just these vague senses of the manufactorums of such and such, blah, blah,
it's
blah.
not
It's no, this is literally this company owned by this person, and this is the designer on this weapon
system. And you can look that up.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, that's the Holly LRM launcher.
So that feels really almost historical in a sense, where it's you could look up all these specific details about a conflict.
Sure. And it can be kind of hokey for sure. It's definitely sci-fi, don't get me wrong, especially once you get to the later in the timeline with the clans and stuff, because they're kind of hokey intrinsically. But especially the beginnings of it, and what I'll lovingly call intro tech, where it's just really the big 5 great houses before the clan invasion and all these splinter factions, and there was the periphery and a few other things, but it was just so clean. And it's just what's going on in this universe? It's you've got all these rulers or governments of these various factions, and they don't like each other because they all wanted Earth, and Earth is the cradle of humanity, etc., etc., but they've never been able to get it. There's a big backstory about this, who did control Earth for the longest time, and they actually got up and left the Star League Defense Force. They leave because of all this strife. They come back later, clans, hundreds of years later, after they've developed into their own strange society, far away. But in the aftermath of the Star League Defense Force leaving, all these houses just have that titanic conflict, and it kind of leaves them all just reeling. And when Battletech first starts out, it's a kind of in a lull technologically. Battle mechs are rare. They're held by princes and rulers and dukes. There might be a mech on a planet, and and the duke's got it, and he uses it to lord over the peasants, a backwater. But then there might be, several star systems away, several jumps. There might be might be called a hive city in 40K, where it's just this is just a super dense super city with tons of commerce and trade, and it's very, runs the gamut in sci-fi from, your backwaters and your desert planets all the way to, your megalopolises. And I just find that within all of that, there's stories to be told, down from the infantryman and the spy and all the way up to grand like space battles and planetary invasions and political intrigue. So much political intrigue. Again, I call it Game of Thrones in space.
Okay.
Prior to Game of Thrones, again, the great houses. It's easy to draw the comparison there. There's House Steiner, which is my favorite. The Germans, they're like the rich boys. They've got a lot of money. They love to throw it around. They're good at industry and trade, but they're not always maybe the best in terms of their military because they're kind of they'll be generals because of who they know versus who
actual skill.
Right. So they throw money at the problem, so to speak. Be like they always great jokes about their scout lances being like the heaviest, most powerful mechs. So like send the scouts, and it's like 100-ton Atlas, and it's like for another force that would be like the ultimate Titan killer, but for them it's like, oh, it's a scout, just throw it out. Not that they really do that, but that's the joke. Then you had like House Kurita, which is like space kind of Neo-Japan, frankly. A little, again, this was originally invented in the late 80s, so bear that in mind. But they're like believe in the Bushido Code and all of that, and the way of the warrior and all that. And then
you
have
want to fight honorably.
Right, exactly. And then there's the Federated Sons, who I would say is like Western Europe and America most likely. They're, freedom, etc. A lot of that. They're kind of been the good guys, air quotes. Nobody's really a good guy exactly, though. Big picture. Then you have House Lao, who are like space communism, space North Korea. They've been called a lot of things. You don't have citizenship, intrinsically there. You have to like earn it.
Okay.
But usually by serving in the military, etc. But they're known for they have the warrior houses that are like these elite units, and they can do some really cool stuff with like stealth tech, things like that. And then you have the Free Worlds League, House Marek, which is a lot of people's favorites because they're just like crazy. They're like a confederation of all these different worlds that said, hey, yeah, we'll kind of unite under one banner, but they're all kind of their own government.
Okay, that's fun.
And the joke with them is Marek's always at war with itself. So they're just like,
they can't unify enough to actually do
right.
anything.
They have it's kind of a military dictatorship, but all of their own worlds can manage themselves in their own affairs, and they may squabble. So you might, deal with that. But and then amongst that, there's all these other factions. I'm gonna go too long here, but basically,
I said 60 seconds.
You did, but what I want to get at here is just that if you want like deep characters with a lot of backstory, as well as just down to the silly cool stompy robots, like that's all there for you, and I haven't found that anywhere else in gaming, at least for me. 40K is deep, but not, I find a lot of the characters hard to relate to. They're not real
really
people.
Grounded. It's almost like too mythical proportions, kind of a thing.
These are just real people. Now, are there like weird clan stuff? Again, once you get to the clans, it gets a little more like 40K and hokey, where they're like test tube super people.
Okay.
They're not quite Space Marines or anything like that, don't get me wrong, but it's like they like do their gene stuff to like maximize the best people possible, etc. But
so would you say that overall it is more of a grounded
100%
type of a narrative?
100%. Okay. Like they're, and it's not so dour either. Like I feel like 40K sometimes again in the grim darkness of the far future,
millions of souls die every day.
Yeah, and it's just sure there's a lot of war going on here. It is a war game universe.
But it's also a real world where real people have real lives.
What I like about this is there's a point in the timeline where there isn't a lot of war. From like 3081, when the Republic of the Sphere pops up, kind of retakes over the center of the inner sphere. There's not like a major, I mean, there's probably conflicts. I haven't looked into it too deep, but there's like a 50-year period of like kind of a golden age where there's not like huge major conflicts occurring. And then the Dark Age happens and spins things off again. But regardless.
But the fact that they make room for that is opposed to it's like 40K, like you're saying,
never
where it's
ending.
like always at war.
It's a little, it can be a little much. And I think it's cool too to see development. You mentioned groundedness. It's like you look at the universe at 2099 and then you look at it in 3151.
Stuff's actually happened. Things have advanced.
Things have completely advanced, like especially obviously it's a war game universe. The mechs themselves have developed extremely. The planes, the jets, the technology, the weapons that are being used to fight these wars are oftentimes significantly more deadly.
Yeah.
And that's represented in the rules too.
Yeah, that's cool to see happen. That brings up another question, which I was going to ask a little later, but since we're segueing so smoothly into it, explain the situation with the whole timeline thing, because things actually do advance.
Yep.
Factions come and go, characters die, new characters come up. How does that all work in terms of gaming in Battletech?
Sure. So I kind of 40K for the longest time. I know they're advancing now, but it was just this universe. It was a backdrop. You could do anything you want, but it never like changed. It's just this. It's a perpetual state. Battletech is kind of like a timeline, as you put it, with different eras. And Catalyst Game Labs, the guys who are developing and publishing it, they kind of have done this themselves. So there's the Secession Wars era, which is I call Intro Tech. That's the early 3000s up until like 3049.
But that's kind of like the core space that people play in.
I would say that's probably where I'm going to make an educated guess and say the majority of Battletech played is in that timeline.
Okay.
The second biggest one is the Clan Invasion, which is like 3049, 3050 is when they really show up to like 3058 or 52, I forget. Don't quote me on all that, but that's the clans show up from outside. They left earlier, that Star League Defense Force. They come back and they say Terra's ours, and they have way better tech. And that's really interesting because it's like almost like an alien force, but they're human. Another cool thing about Battletech is there aren't really aliens.
We are alone in the universe.
And at least in Battletech, there are aliens, but it's like they're not intelligent, really. There's like a famous novel, I think it's Far Country, where there's like a bird person with a spear or something. I don't know. I haven't read that one. But beyond the clan invasion, there's the Federated Commonwealth Civil War. After that, there's the Jihad. Then you have the whole, that gets resolved. And then you have that peaceful time. And then there's the Dark Age. And now most recently, within just the last few years, now we have the newest, most at the forefront of the universe around 3151 is the Il Clan. I don't know. But basically the clans did it finally. After 100 years, Clan Wolf took over Terra. So spoiler alert. There was a bunch of stuff about that, but they are now in control of Terra. So Clan Wolf has Terra. What they're all doing with that, I haven't followed it super closely, but the timeline advances. But what that allows you to do, because the universe is still big enough for there to be hundreds of planets, you can pick what you want as a gamer. So if you're getting into it, you probably don't play 3151 because that's where a lot of the crazy stuff, advanced things are, you know. It's not just targeting computers, which are already an advanced rule, but it could be targeting computers combined with an LBX-20 autocannon with special ammunition and all this other crazy stuff, you know. And that's not even that complicated, probably. That's a lot earlier on, but crazy different armor, crazy different mech construction rules, because that's a whole other thing. You can build your own mechs in this if you want to. But you start out, you play Intro Tech, you play Succession Wars, you get your feel for you, and I think that does a great job of grounding the universe. Again, that's when the Inner Sphere as a whole in the lore is kind of rebuilding itself. They're getting back on track after all those terrible wars with all the nukes and losing everything and their capability to build. They're rebuilding, getting their legs under them. Mechs are rare-ish. They're rebuilding their factories. They're getting their societies back online. But if you don't want that and you really like, I don't know, the clan invasion, you can model that. You can do that. There's battles for that. And again, the universe is big enough to where you can do your own side story and go crazy with it. You can be Clan Jade Falcon fighting against Clan Ghost Bear if you want. Maybe they had a trade dispute. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, I like that it leaves space for your own stories to be told as well.
Yeah, it's not that small, but it's not that
super it's not impossibly big, but it's also big enough to leave some vague gray area corners of the universe. How does the different timeline eras in your experience interact with like getting a game in? Is it like, well, I only have stuff from 3150, so I can't really play a game against you because you just started and only have Succession War stuff?
Sure. So in my experience, Battletech, the community is very forgiving when it comes to like WYSIWYG stuff.
Since it's all just on your mech sheet anyways, it doesn't matter as much what the model has.
Yeah. Now, people will generally try to keep the mech, like the core mech down. There's dozens of variants sometimes, maybe dozens extreme, but there's oftentimes many variants of a given mech just before you even get into customizing it yourself. But if you're like, I've got a catapult, this is the K2 variant, you don't have to have the specific K2 variant. You could put down a C1, nobody's going to care. And I'm sure if you told your opponent, hey, I've only got the blank mech here, but I'm going to model it because we want to play 3039, can it just be X? And I imagine they would say, of course, we're reasonable people, I would hope anyway.
So the timelines don't really get in the way of
in my experience
necessarily.
It's where they could get in the way of gaming potentially is especially like you mentioned with the later eras. If you got somebody who's never played those things and hasn't been exposed to some of that stuff, that can be a little jarring.
Shock, yeah. So one thing you mentioned a few minutes ago made me wonder, do the rules actually get more complicated as the tech advances through these timelines? Because you were kind of making it sound like that's the case.
Kind of, yeah. You get more options.
So it's more options, but they're more complicated options, or it's just like, well, now this gun has 3 dice instead of 2 dice?
It can be. It'd be like, so an autocannon in Introtech just shoots a solid slug. And later on, you can get an autocannon that shoots like a shotgun. And then you have to track all of the pellet spreads.
I see.
And then, and now we can do special ammunition. So now I've got incendiaries that have a different effect or whatever.
So it could be difficult potentially to jump into a later era if you're new to the game.
Sure.
And just not familiar with
and if you're only playing
options.
And you're like, I just know Introtech, and then you just went up, I don't know how this would ever happen. I would hope it wouldn't, but you just show up to a game day or something and somebody's like, yep, I'm bringing I've got Inferno missiles on my SRMs, and then they are like very much aware of like the standard rules in Total Warfare, and they're like, okay, I'm going to start shooting into your forest hexes that you're sitting in, setting them on fire. Now all your guys are, and if you've just been playing games among friends and you didn't even know that was an option.
You can set the woods on fire?
Right, and then like, oh god, there's a lot of stuff that you can do. I think Battletech, its biggest issue is kind of what you're getting at, is there's so much options that it can create a mismatch of expectation very easily. And that's probably its biggest weakness as a system, and I think that's what's prevented it from having the growth of a game like, say, 40K, because I think on a lore level, it's on that level, at least for me. But from a gameplay perspective, it can be a bit cumbersome and unwieldy.
Because of all that choice.
I don't think necessarily all the different options are super complicated. Some of them I'm sure are.
It's just the volume.
Yeah, there's just so much. You pick up a Battletech Total Warfare book. I've got one right in front of me, and it's about 200 some pages. It looks like about 300 pages. Sorry, correct me. And a few of these are short stories, but the vast majority, so there's like 2-page short story, is all rules.
Wow.
Whereas if you go to
one book,
and this is one book, this is the core book.
Oh, that's the core book. Okay.
But then you look at 40K, you look at whatever.
Yeah, and the core rules are 40 pages, maybe.
50 pages, but then the rest of this huge hulking rule book that you bought is fluff or painting tips or missions, etc. Whereas this is like so much. Now, you might not use a lot of this. Like, are you going to be using the building rules? Maybe not. Are you going to even use infantry?
Right.
You can just
so a lot of it is
that.
Modular, potentially.
Yes. Modularity is the name of the game. Okay. But that's where it can lead to
somebody just really wants to do all these combined arms things in buildings, and I'm just like, I just wanted to
show up with 50 stands of infantry, and that's my army. And then you thought we were playing Lance v. Lance, and you got 4 mechs, and I've got 50 stands of infantry. And it's just like, okay, I didn't even know you could I haven't even read the infantry portion of the rule book for some, because it didn't interest me. So I could see as a pickup game, this being something that's very difficult to do.
That's interesting.
You almost have to agree with your opponent, I would hope, before you arrive on like, what timeline are we playing at? Are we doing 30-50? Are we doing 30? Are we just playing loosey-goosey here,
Are there any specific advanced things that you're wanting to do?
Yeah. So I think you kind of have to have rapport with your opponent. And again, I think that's stifled its growth, because this isn't a game where, like 40K, you can show up and say, hey, at the game
My
day,
2,000 point army
we play 2,000 points.
Fine to play your 2,000 point army.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, there's a common understanding.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would have thought that the timeline thing was more the issue, because I think that that's something people fear with a game like 40K, where it's like, well, if we advance the timeline, my faction will become obsolete and like my units won't be good anymore, which I guess happens anyways just with the addition and rules changes.
Indeed. But you bring up an interesting point, because factions have been destroyed. Clan Smoke Jaguar on a map behind you, to your right, they were part of the initial clan invasion. They get destroyed in the lore. Like, sure, you could argue, there's remnants or whatever. Sure, you can do that. You can hand wave if you want to play Smoke Jaguar later in the timeline.
Sure.
But canonically, the vast majority of their forces, the Star League goes back or whatever, and they like just go to their home planet and they take them out. Wow. They're gone.
Yeah.
So it's like, I could see that making a feel bad if you just like really like Clan Smoke Jaguar, and you're like, oh man, they're like dead after 30 whatever.
Right.
58
so
or whatever.
I already painted all these mechs and stands of infantry and tanks to be Cloud Jaguar, but now all my friends just want to play a later era. And
for sure. And I could see that being a feel bad. What I would say is you kind of, it's a give and a take. And fortunately, this game doesn't usually need a lot of actual miniatures.
Mm-hmm. Standard game is what? Typically 4 mechs of a lance.
Typically 4
one lance
V4
versus 1 lance. Yeah.
So it's not like you're down hundreds of models or dozens of models,
hundreds of hours painting,
like with 40K or fantasy.
If you really had to buy 4 more mechs and paint them, that wouldn't be the end of the world,
generally speaking. So I think because of that, that's a little more acceptable. But I'm sure for some diehards, I don't know, but at that point, if you're that diehard to where you've got, dozens of mechs, I would hope the fact that, a few factions that have died along the way isn't that bothering you that much, because you've already bought into the system. I doubt, and again, it's worth noting too, again, those most popular, not powerful, timelines are those beginning ones, like,
before
Succession Wars, Clan Invasion. And again, those big 5 houses, those have remained. It's not like the super main factions have ever died. Sure, have people gotten hit in the face pretty hard? House Lao, they've gotten hit in the face a few times. But it's interesting.
Yeah,
I think that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So with all of that in mind, if you had to pick like one thing that is what gets you most excited about Battletech, what is it?
Ignoring the lore, because I could wax about that a lot. From a gameplay perspective, I love the turn structure and system for it.
All right, let's dive into an overview of that then.
So it's kind of a simultaneous turn thing. Initiative really matters, but it's not a system of I go, you go in that sense. Mm-hmm. It's alternating activations, which I know is very popular, kind of very modern. But essentially, I guess I'll just demonstrate by explaining. So turn starts, you do an initiative check. You roll, whoever gets higher gets the initiative or whatever. There are special rules for adding modifiers if somebody's got like a command module or whatever, and you can go crazy with that. But a lot of times it's just 2d6ing off. Then you do movement, where you alternate back and forth, moving 1 unit at a time until everybody's moved everything. And again, assuming you outnumber 2-1, you might move 2 guys for their 1, etc., until those line up again.
So it's not just go 1 and 1 and then do all the rest of yours. They actually try to keep it.
So if you did the battle of 50 stands of infantry versus 4 mechs, you'd have to move like, I don't know, whatever the odds are there,
12 at a time or something.
Yeah, something like that. Exactly. You get my mind. So you'd be moving that many, and then they'd move 1 mech, and then you'd move that many, but whoever won the initiative always gets the last move is the key difference.
So you have to kind of figure out that system before you start moving it, like so that you know you're doing it in the pattern that will end with the right person.
Correct.
Okay.
So generally you win the initiative, the opponent goes first.
If you
and
have
that
equal
sounds
numbers,
weird.
yeah. But yeah, when you think about trying to outmaneuver, you want to see where they went and then go.
Yeah, it's actually
in response to that.
oftentimes a big advantage because you can react.
Yeah.
Because no
And
shooting occurs.
Exactly. So that I think is the other important thing with the way that this turn system works, where moving second is good, is because the shooting happens after that.
Right. So after everybody's moved, then you do shooting. And what happens here is you kind of declare all the firing for everything and how you're targeting it. And mechs can shoot at multiple things and such. There's negative modifiers for that and such. But you're very much allowed to target things. And you have to think of things like heat management for a lot of these units, which is very unique. And I like in this kind of mech game where it's not just shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting or whatever until something
There's
dies.
some limits.
There's some limits and you can push them, but there might
There's
be some negative
consequences,
modifiers for that. But all the shooting happens simultaneously. So you never will have a situation theoretically where you just got blown off the board and you never got to fire back. Now, if they've got guns with way longer range than you, I guess that
Or
could
you just got
theoretically
way out
happen.
of position and you're not seeing them.
Sure, I guess if they're behind you and
Yeah.
you don't, and you're
But
facing
that would be
the-
hard.
But sure, if they've done that, then they maybe deserve that situation, right? But you get to shoot and they get to shoot and then you resolve everything. But all of the damage is happening simultaneously. And for me, in my mind's eye, the narrative, that just seems so cool to me, where it's like, okay, my guys moved up here, your guys moved up there, and now we're exchanging fire. And that's happening at the same time. And you don't have this weird situation where I sometimes get in 40K shooting, especially where it's like, okay, I blew off that guy and they just did nothing.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I'm like, why wouldn't they shoot back?
Right.
Or whatever. Or why wouldn't they, I don't know, do something, duck for cover. I don't know. Sometimes I think you can do that, like go to ground in some of those versions, but regardless.
6th edition.
But it's just like, this gives you that. It's just, okay, what did you do? I shot back. Okay, with what?
Yeah.
Right? Check the range, etc. You go there. And then that's where you do damage. And
Right. And so then going second means a lot because now you can either get out of their firing arc or you can come around and get in their flank now that they've
100%.
decided their spot. So a lot of power.
And this is a game where facing and things matter. After you roll, it's kind of like War Machine that I described in a previous episode where you have a base number of like how good you are at something. And then you're rolling 2d6 and you're trying to roll like under that number, I believe, or over that number. Sorry. And I'm going to get so off track because there's so many things I want to say. But you're rolling 2d6 and you're trying to hit a target number.
Okay.
Once you hit that, then you roll for a location. So that's going to be like a little unique to a lot of people coming from 40K.
Right, you didn't just
or
hit the
something.
mech, you hit it in the leg or in the arm or in the core.
And that could be modified by where you are when you shoot them. So if you're on their left flank...
better chance to hit them in the left arm.
Yeah, you actually can hit them in the left arm much more likely, and you can't hit them in the right one.
It makes sense.
So it's like where
It helps
you are.
that it's intuitive.
Right, so... And there's charts for this. So there's... You roll once to hit, you roll once to hit, or to see where you hit, and then you do damage. And damage just happens. So there's no, like, check to wound. It's just, what is your gun? How much damage does it do? It does that much to that location. This can get really a lot of rolling really quickly because certain weapons, like missiles, for example, they're probably the big obvious example. Some of those launchers might fire 20 missiles.
Oh, wow. So you got to roll for 20 locations?
No.
Oh.
So it does groupings. So depending on the weapon, it will do damage groupings. So for the one I was thinking of, a long-range missile launcher that shoots 20 missiles, those are grouped into clumps of 5.
Okay.
But
So
if
you
you
roll.
hit, you roll for the locations. Or no, first you hit with the missile launcher, then you roll how many missiles out of the 20 hit,
actually did hit.
and then you roll for individual locations for each cluster.
Nice.
So you
But
can,
again, if you only have 4 models on the
Right.
board, that's
But you
not
can-
too laborious.
Sure, but you can quickly see
Yeah.
how, like, okay, we're adding up a lot here. Now, none of this is particularly confusing in my mind. Once
I would
you
agree.
get the system, it's a lot of rolling.
Yeah.
And so some people will do this thing where they'll have like a tackle box and they'll put 2 pairs of dice in like 14 slots and they'll do this.
Oh, wow.
And then they go, okay, I got
That's
a 7 on that.
interesting.
And then they
Yeah.
go that. And that's to speed up the resolution of this.
Okay.
I've not done that myself.
Yeah, I've never heard of
But
that
I've seen it
approach,
done.
but it's a very good
It makes
efficiency
sense
tip.
for this. So they'll say, okay, I'm going to do this. Boom. Okay, I got that many missiles, blanket, and you just go down the line. But then you just mark off damage points on that location on a sheet, a record sheet is what they're called. And these exist for everything from the mechs to the planes to the tanks to the infantry. They all look different depending on the type of unit it is. Infantry are much smaller, and you're actually, instead of knocking off armor pips, you're
It's a dude.
it's a dude. Yeah. It's very interesting how infantry works in this game. It's very cool, but I'm going to get off topic here. Yeah. So, and then you're also tracking heat as well for many of these units. And that's
And that's
raising
like when
on a
you
bar.
fire a gun, it uses a certain, or it creates a
increases
certain amount
your
of
heat.
heat.
Correct.
Because it's, being used.
And then most mechs, for example, have heat sinks, which dissipate heat. So as a baseline, we'll say this one mech has 10 heat sinks. So it's getting rid of 10 heat a turn. So if you fire less than 10 heat, plus your movement, which also can cause heat,
then you're fine.
You're
'cause
fine.
Net neutral.
Net neutral. But if you shot off 15, now you've gone up 5. And that might mean, now you're going to move a little slower. Or you're going to be a little less accurate. And that goes all the way from 0 to 30. And with increasing checks to see if your pilot can even maintain consciousness.
Oh, wow.
Because he's like in the cockpit cooking alive. Stuff like that. Is the mech going to shut down out of like just safety for itself? And is he able to override that? It's just really cool. And that's really the core of the game. It's heat management, moving around, shooting and checking for locations, and marking things off. One thing
It's simple.
So simple. What gets bolted onto that is when you're marking off all these armor pips and stuff, there's chances for things like criticals, and that can result in even more rolls to where, okay, where did I crit? Okay, what location on that thing do I crit? Do I hit the gun? Do I hit the ammo box in that arm? Because those are very different things. You might disable the gun
Or
if
just
you hit the gun,
blow up the
or
whole
if you hit
thing,
the
yeah.
ammo box and he doesn't have case, which is a technology, you just exploded the whole mech because you do however much ammo is in that
Wow.
location to the mech. So it's like, there was 20 AC5 shots in there. So what's 20 times 5? That's 100 damage.
Yikes.
So the mech's gone or whatever, you just explode the mech. And or you could hit the gyroscope, which is the thing that keeps the mech able to balance. And if you hit that, it's like, now the pilot's got to try.
What is the roll for where you hit? Is it a 2d6?
It's 2d6. Almost everything in the game is 2d6.
Okay.
So if it can be, I think there might be some 1d6 rolls hidden in there, but almost all of them are 2d6.
Does it end up feeling swingy where it can be like, wow, you just cored my mech on turn 1 because you just rolled well?
I would say it feels swingy because of crits, if anything, not so much about coring. And there's a lot of stuff you can do that influence how hard it is to hit you. And then that also plays into what kind of technology are you using. Certain mechs are inherently more durable than others. So if you're running all energy weapons, you don't have ammo boxes to explode. But that's kind of a downside of, ammunition-based weapons. Whereas heat or energy weapons cause a lot more heat generally per shot. Okay. So that's their negative.
Yeah. So that's another interesting element that I'm aware of with Battletech, which is this idea of things are just what they are, and there's some inherent imbalance.
Yes.
And there's not necessarily a very cut and dry points system for things like there is in some other war games.
There is a point system. It's called Battle Value. They're on the second version of it. Okay. So it's called BV2, Battle Value 2. I cannot speak to how actually balanced it is. but it's a point at a scale that I don't particularly like it. Like a mech might be worth 1,536 points.
Wow, yeah.
So it's like we're going to play 8,000 points, but it's like one mech is like 1,536 or whatever. So it's very specific.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not sure
interesting.
what their formula is for coming up with that. So, but I agree with you. I think this is a system that rewards people not going into it for competitive play and really leaning into the narrative side of things and being the forefront. Not that you can't be strategic and make good choices. You can. There are
like we've talked
tournaments
about,
for
if
this
you're
game.
in a specific strategic tactical situation, it's fun, even if it's imbalanced, to then figure out how can I make the most of this situation. Yeah.
And this is a game too where like crazy stuff can happen, and I think the people that love Battletech love it because of that. This is a game where you could have one mech versus 4, and that one mech theoretically could get really lucky and beat the other 4, especially if you put a good pilot in them. And I think that's cool too, because you have to model the pilots. There's 2 stats for pilots. It's piloting skill, and that's used 99% of the time to say, is the mech going to fall over?
Oh, nice. Okay.
And that's basically, is he able to keep it upright because he's been hit by so much stuff? Like if you take over 20 points of damage,
hits are actually
literally
just like pushing
he's
it
going
over.
to be knocked over. Or it could be your gyroscope got destroyed, your leg got blown off, who knows? There are all sorts of reasons to take those checks. And then there's gunnery skill, which is how accurate you are. And the average pilot in Battletech lore is a 4-5, which is 4 gunnery, which is like you hit on a 4+ base. Sounds pretty good on 2d6, right? But there's a lot of modifiers.
I see. Okay.
And then piloting is a 5-up. Okay. And then there's a formula for increasing the pilot skill that affects the model's point value. So if you really are playing with points, you can still model that. And there's a thing on Catalyst Game Lab's website, I think. It's called the Master Unit List.
Okay.
That has all this written for every unit in the game ever.
Appreciate that.
So excellent resource, by the way, for listeners who aren't familiar. If you want to like look up what mechs existed for what faction at a certain time era, you can just look that up and get a huge list of every mech and every tank and every gun that the infantry ever had in that time frame for that faction.
Wow.
With the points costs, with all the points costs for all the different piloting levels or whatever. So it exists online. It's pretty cool. They've got a lot of great tools.
So to go back to the idea that you just mentioned of it plays best when you're leaning into the narrative, does Catalyst Games provide scenarios that you can play that help do that, so that you feel like, regardless of whatever else, like what the balance is, this feels good because the scenario is good?
Yes. So there are so many like mini campaigns and splat books. They keep changing the names of them, frankly. This game's been almost 40 years old. So if you find an old book, and that's another cool thing about Battletech, the rules haven't drastically changed in those almost 40 years. So you can go find a book from 1994. I have some behind me that are very old, that are scenario books. I can use them now. In 2025.
Just as relevant. Love
and
it.
Sure, there might be some things, but there's tons of scenario booklets and options. You could even look at the Mech Warrior, which is more the RPG side of this.
Okay.
And they have excellent options for that too. There is so much in terms of like scenario based like lookup play that's published that you can find for relatively cheap too. I might add.
Also nice.
Especially if you look on the used market, if you want them in paper. Otherwise, PDFs I think are reasonable as well.
Okay.
And on drive-through RPG, etc. But there's a lot, is what I want to say. And they keep making new stuff, and the new stuff is all admittedly often more expensive. But if you're buying the stuff, it's usually hardback,
full
color, thicker, full color. And I will say the art is startling.
Startling? That doesn't necessarily mean.
Let me clarify. Startling and how much better it is than the old art. So I think old like Mech Warrior, like First Ed Mech Warrior, has some of the worst art ever made, but it's so bad that I love it.
Nice.
But so this rule book I think I got in like 2010
or
2009. So you can look at that cover art. Kind of hokey. This is a little later, obviously. This is after Catalyst took over, because it was was it Fan Pro? I forget who did it before them. Oh, sorry, 2011 is when this came out. But then you like look at a new book, and just the quality of the art is just night and day in my experience. And even the miniatures themselves, the book layouts, they follow the same format, but just looks so much better. So they're constantly like reinventing themselves on a publishing side of things.
Well, keeping the same core rules, which is
exactly.
Yeah.
So it never really, the stuff you buy never goes out of like,
right. It's no longer relevant kind of thing.
Yeah,
where,
it's everything I own and have owned over the past 15 years.
Does that mean it's harder to find good prices in used bookstores, like it is for old Warhammer stuff?
Sometimes.
Because it holds its value.
I will say that some of the stuff is, I don't think Warhammer unfortunately is a lot more, well, not unfortunately, Warhammer is more popular. I'm just going to say that. So Battletech has the benefit of there's fewer people like me
looking for it anyways.
Who are looking for it. So generally, if you're looking for Battletech, you can find books in used bookstores if you're hunting around for under $20 in my experience. Will there occasionally be some person who looked it up on eBay and then is like valuing this book for $80 when it's like, oh, come on, guys, give me a break.
Yeah.
That
Fair.
does
so
exist.
There's scalpers out
I've
there
run
still.
into both. But
yeah. Well, I like that idea that there are these narrative scenarios readily available, because I think that that's something when there is a system that has that type of a more difficult to engage with point system, and it's a little harder to just do like a one-off pickup game that's going to be balanced. It's really nice when there are scenarios that you can rely on and feel like, okay, we can just pick a scenario out of here, even if we're not doing the whole campaign. We can still get some of that context of what's going on, similar to when we were playing Saratoga and the Great Battles of the American Revolution. We get to read the little narrative snippet, and we know we're replaying this specific situation in battle. And I love that there's, that's what they're doing and providing you with these scenarios to play.
I just picked it up as you were talking. I was listening, I promise, but this is just an example. So I've got the Day of Heroes scenario booklet. This is following the Grey Death Legion, which is a big mercenary unit, and it's just, this is like just lore, and then and characters with like art. So this is getting into some of the hokiness.
It's so great.
But like, who are they? Like, it's got like skills if you want to use them in the RPG, but this is actually for Battletech. But then, hey, in the back, it's like map sheets.
Nice.
What are we doing? What are we doing? Scenario 3, and I think there's like just tons of these. These are all just scenario, and it's just full of them.
Yeah,
just
I love
chock
that.
full of campaign scenario 8. Like, what are we doing here? And it's just. I don't even know if we'll ever get through this, and I don't know if I'll ever use it all, but even if it's just inspiration for my own ideas.
Absolutely.
So cool. Oh, FASA, that's who used to do it. So it's like, again, this is a book I found used probably for $10, and I don't know if I'll ever use the actual like scenarios in it, but just as a source of inspiration and just coolness of the.
And I honestly love that black and white line art. That is great stuff.
The guy who drew some of this stuff, and I don't know, he had something with teeth where he had to like very outline people's teeth. Like, I don't know, people smiling in weird ways. Some of the human faces aren't always the best, but it's very of its time.
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely.
Some of the faces, I don't know. They're like,
I love them. I think,
but
those
they're
are great.
like ugly people, but like in a good way.
Yeah,
like it's like they look like
character.
Like, yeah, they're not. Nobody here is perfect. These are like rough and tumble characters,
Yeah. So what is your perspective on how this feels in terms of being a hex-based game versus an open movement game like most miniature war games?
Sure. So first off, before I answer that, there are conversion rules to run it as
I didn't know that.
So that exists.
That's interesting.
Because they've thought of everything. So that exists. However, I like the hexes, and the big thing, you lose a little bit of the spectacle, although you can look up. I just saw pictures, I think today, as of recording, from the Irish Masters tournament for Battletech, and they were running hex sheets, and they put 3D terrain on top of it.
I've seen some of those too, and they do look really cool.
And they look just fine. So from a spectacle standpoint, that can exist. You can put in some effort and get a very nice looking map on just a hex sheet. However, if you're just playing like I typically do, it's just flat. The new maps that they put out are excellent and I think very legible and do a great job. Some of the older ones, not so much, I'll be frank, but still playable. What I like about a hex sheet, and this being slightly more in the board game realm in terms of movement there, is there's no uncertainty.
I do appreciate the exactness that brings.
Yes, you will never run into a scenario where you don't know how much it costs to move into that hex.
Yeah, or whether you're in their flank or not.
It's objective. And I really like that from a gameplay perspective. Do you lose some of the freeformness? I guess so, but frankly, it's never bothered me in the freeformness of movement, I mean.
Yeah.
I find the benefits have outweighed the negatives. I think the best case scenario for what I would want to do is I would want to get like a big mat like this, a 6x4, but have like a bunch of 1.25 inch hexes on it, just out throughout the whole thing. And then I would get my own custom hex terrain that I'd plop in different configurations. I think that's like my dream.
Okay.
How close I am to that dream? Not close at all, but that's what I think would be an ideal world.
That'd be like the pinnacle of the experience is you're still using the hexes, but it's still the fully 3D painted terrain.
Famously, HeroScape, which uses hex like build Lego, works excellent.
Oh, nice.
For Battletech. And I've seen a lot of HeroScape tiles used on Battletech games, even today.
Yeah, it also seems like something that'd be pretty easy to 3D print. So with
You're
the
probably
proliferation of 3D printers, it'd probably be not too hard to get a battlefield put together.
It's probably easier than it's ever been to get exciting looking Battletech terrain with the added assurance of hard lines that the hexes provide, so to speak. So I view it as mostly a benefit. Is it a different feel? 110%. Yeah, you're not bringing a tape measure, but that doesn't bother me. I don't know. Doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I don't mind it either. I think it, even in some ways, harkens to like turn-based tactical strategy games from computer video game consoles and things, which is just a different feel. But I like that. Has some nostalgia element as well. But yeah, I think for this particular type of thing where that positioning and facing and all of that really does matter, the hexes work. And I think it's pretty iconic with Battletech. The idea of the hexes and the paper mats and maps and things like that just do have their own look and feel to them that I think is really cool.
And from a practicality standpoint, I've got one Battletech box just full of mats, and I've probably got like 40 of them in that one box.
Nice.
It's nice to be able to just have all those in a box that's maybe
you're not taking up
2.5 inches
terrain.
thick. Yeah, and not having tons of terrain that I have to store for my one system that I don't play as often as I would like, etc.
Yeah.
So from a practicality standpoint, I think it's also just a big win there.
Yeah, the fact that you could have 8 mechs and a pile of maps and you could play
done
with your friend and a bunch.
Literally, because you could just think that this mech could be anything. Just as long as you guys just agree.
Yeah, and again, since all the details are on those sheets,
you could play. You could play with quarters.
Yeah,
skewed across. I mean,
yeah.
Do we lose something then? Yeah, probably. But
all right, I have a wrap-up question. But is there anything else you didn't get a chance to say that you want to say?
Sure. I think I'm a big proponent of this game. But I want to acknowledge I think there are some flaws. I've kind of outlined them already. In that I think the learning curve is, I've kind of touched on this, can be steep. There's a lot of rules in this. I think each one is intrinsically pretty simple, but it's really easy to pick up the Total Warfare book and start reading all the different sections and being like, oh my God, I'm looking at like bombing runs and strafe attacks and all this stuff. And I just want to tell new players that are prospective, like, don't look at aerospace movement. Don't look at aerospace combat, unless that's something you want to do, I guess, right away. Look at mechs.
That's all I'm interested in is how airplanes attack mechs. So
fair enough. Well, then we'll have to do that. But focus on just the battle mechs, and I think they make a battle mech manual, which is basically the core rules, but just for mechs. They got rid of all the other stuff.
They also have their intro set that comes with a couple mechs and only has those core rules and things, which I picked up and was helpful to streamline the initial dipping of the toes into the rules without feeling like, oh, this is an overwhelming amount of things I need to know.
I think this was really exciting for me when I first got it, but I quickly realized like this was a lot to even me, you know, who was just soaking this all up so excitedly. But it's just like, man. So I wouldn't really necessarily advise to a new player to pick up the Total Warfare book. I would do exactly what you just said. I would go pick up a starter set for $20 or get the full A Game of Armored Combat box set, which comes with 8 mechs, I think, and some more mats and stuff. That's a more comprehensive full thing. Like you could buy that and just, like you were saying, there's 8 mechs in there. You could never play, you'd never buy anything ever again, and you've just got a game. You're good. But that's like $60. And
as far as starter sets go, that's not
I
bad.
guess you know what, you're right. In light of Warhammer and GW and maybe other companies as well, that's relatively affordable. And again, it fits in a box that you can just put nicely on your shelf, and it looks pretty.
If you're doing $1 per model, maybe it's not as great, but
sure.
In terms of a full game experience,
So it's I think it's got a lot of strength there. If you look in the right spots. But if you're a new player, don't just dive headfirst into Total Warfare and try to soak it all up. I think that can be a lot. And then also I want to acknowledge that this game is cumbersome and the pacing can occasionally be a little bit slow, especially again when you're learning. Once you're figuring it out and get down and you know your different weapon ranges and everything, there's going to be a lot less of that downtime. But that's why I really encourage, again, new players, play Intro Tech. Don't play 3067 stuff. Don't play FedCom Civil War. Don't play Jihad. Don't play... I mean, you can. Don't get me wrong. And don't let me prevent you from doing so. But if you're at all uneasy about the system, play Intro Tech. It's called Intro Tech for a reason. The weapons are very simple. They often have very easy to remember ranges and heat values, damage values. The mechs themselves are less complicated. Play there, and you'll be more successful, in my opinion. And then finally, just remember you're going to have to interact with a big piece of paper, potentially many of them, for tracking damage and stuff. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about practicality of playing this. I like the idea of, and I haven't done this much, putting them in a laminated sheet or something and get a dry erase, especially for tracking heat. It's a lot easier just to go whoop and then wipe it off with your finger real quick.
You're sinking some every turn.
Versus doing it with a pencil, erasing, and then moving it up. You know, it can get really...
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
And I've done that. And I've been okay, and I know that's how people, I'm sure, did it back in the day, but we have the technology. I don't think it's that expensive to pick up a few, like, binder sheet things.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So, stuff I advise. And then also, big shout out to the sarna.net. That is SARNA.net. That is the community wiki for Battletech. It is the best community wiki on the planet. It is phenomenal. Now, it's not just talking Battletech Table Talk. It's talking Battletech everything, the video games, Alpha Strike, pretty much everything Battletech that's ever come out, the RPGs. But it's got so much information. If you're just curious about the lore and you don't want to put down money, you could read thousands of articles that are incredibly detailed on sarna.net. If you're at all like me, and
who's producing this content? Just fans,
the community at large. It is literally, I'm just going to pull it up right now. Doing this live, listeners, but it looks like this.
Okay.
And it will have it has a page on like every mech ever released, every variant, all the factions. If you just want to do lore dives, you can go super hard. It's kept fairly open. I know they post articles, they do news, and it's free and it's accessible and it's there. And again, shout out to the master unit list as well for Battletech. Look that up. That's done by CGL, Catalyst Game Labs. They do excellent stuff, and you can look up all the points values. And for every mech ever, what I want to put out there is there's just awesome free resources for the game.
That's great. Fun fact, my friend Dave in my other wargaming group knows the guy who started that. Went to high school
The
with
master unit list?
him. No, Sarna.net.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. What a time to be alive. Well, does he still manage it? I'm just learning this now. Maybe you've told me this before. I don't remember.
I may have mentioned it a while ago when we first played
Yeah.
Battletech, but yeah, I'll have to talk to him and see what
Wow.
he still knows about him.
Fascinating. So I'm going to get really off topic now, listeners, but there's, those like Battletech pods. They're like a video game thing you
yeah.
go sit in. So there's a guy in our town at one point a few years ago who has the majority of those left in the U.S.
What?
And me and my wife, as a surprise party, found out she was working with his wife.
No way.
So she was like, at one point, his wife like said something about Battletech, and my wife, who knows who I am, of course, went, "What are you talking about? My husband likes that." And so they coordinated. They did like a surprise Halloween party for me. I don't remember what year this was, but I just like got brushed into this one place. All my friends and family were there,
Wow.
and we played Battletech like pods for like 4 hours.
That's amazing.
It was a highlight of my I don't know,
Decade?
gaming career. I've never done anything quite that cool.
That is awesome.
And he was just happens to be here. I don't know where he's at anymore. I haven't been there since. I've still got the printouts from each of
Wow.
the games because it would print out like your stats.
No way.
And it was super cool.
What an experience.
But
Wow.
yeah, I'm pretty much true blue Battletech believer. I think if you haven't tried it, you should give it a shot. It might not be for you, but you never know unless you try, and it's pretty affordable to get into.
Yeah.
And even if you don't want to play the game, get into the universe because it's so deep and cool.
Yeah,
If
we've
you're-
talked before about like how new games sometimes struggle with the lore and like getting people
Yeah.
to read stuff, but Battletech has been around long enough that
Yeah.
they do have a lot of books out there, a lot of lore available. And the nice thing about it is it might even be available on your library app like Hoopla or Libby
Yeah.
because 40K stuff, Warhammer things
is
are not.
Yeah, I
That's
found
all
some
closed.
Battletech stuff on my local library apps.
Yeah.
You are correct. It's not always sometimes the full thing, but it'll be an abridged version. But sometimes that's nice.
Yeah,
You
or
just
some
get the
short
whole
stories
book.
or whatever. Yeah.
And there are more short stories put out all the time. They actually make right now a magazine. I'm going so far. I'm sorry, you guys. It's called Shrapnel. I own the first four issues, but they've continued to publish this. I think every month or so, and they're up to like 15 or
Wow.
20. I don't know if it's quarterly now, but more fiction so it's so frequent. If you want it, it's there. And what's cool about it, Cam, too, is they're not just pushing ahead. They keep writing stories
Oh, to fill in the older
Succession
times.
Wars.
That's cool.
So there's new stories getting written in the 2000s era, so the 27 looking into those nuke fights,
Yeah.
that we were talking about, the first Succession Wars and stuff. But there's also stuff getting written in 3151 and everywhere in between.
That's awesome, yeah.
So it's like they're filling it. Mm-hmm. It's the whole timeline is
Right.
still
They're not just
alive.
running off into the future. Yeah.
Right.
It's all living.
The whole timeline is live. So you will still see new stuff about, Introtech era. And you'll still see new stuff about the clan invasion. And you'll still see new stuff about what's going on right now. And even previously. And they'll maybe release a big splat book about one of those conflicts from the past. They'll call it like Battletech Historicals with a bunch
That's
of
also
scenarios.
nice to not feel like your stuff has been left behind
Yeah.
if you like the older eras.
Sure. So if you're like sad about Smoke Jaguars being dead in the later, you just keep playing them in 3051 because who cares? They
Yeah.
existed then, and that timeline is still very popular. So, I could talk even more. Do you have any further questions?
No, you actually answered my final wrap-up question,
Oh.
which was kind of like advice for new players,
Okay.
what you would say to them, and you nailed that really well. So I think that's a pretty well-rounded episode, and I
Yeah.
think we've covered a lot of that. So
For sure. I love this system. I want to do a campaign of it for our group
yeah,
after our 40K campaign is done.
I'm in.
And so maybe we'll talk about that once we get to it, but probably next year at this point.
I think at this point that is likely.
But thank you for listening to me talk about something I'm really passionate about, listeners. If you've ever played Battletech, let me know in the comments. Tell me what great house/clan you like best and why it's Clan Wolf, probably. But no, I'm repping Steiner and Jade Falcon. And did you like Battletech? did you not like Battletech? Why did you not like it? And
We
why
wanna
did you
know.
like it? I want to know about all of it. So I'm Grant.
And I'm Cam, and I'm excited to play more Battletech too.
Bangarang.
Bye.
Bye.